Herzlich willkommen zum Soul Food Journey Podcast, deinem Podcast rund um das Thema Essstörungen und allem, was dazu gehört. Heute möchte ich dir gerne Maris vorstellen. Ich saß eines Tages abends auf dem Sofa und hatte mega Lust auf irgendeine coole Dokumentation oder irgendwas Spannendes. Während ich da so ein bisschen rumgesucht habe oder verschiedene Begriffe in die Suche bei Netflix eingegeben habe, bin ich auf den Dokumentarfilm Ich bin Maris gestoßen, in dem ein junges Mädchen ihren Weg durch eine Essstörung mit Hilfe von ihrer Yoga-Praxis teilt. Die Beschreibung von dieser Dokumentation hat mich damals total fasziniert und so neugierig gemacht. Und nachdem ich die Doku zu Ende geguckt habe, habe ich Maris direkt angeschrieben und zum Podcast eingeladen. Zu dem Zeitpunkt hatte sie allerdings gerade Klausurenphase an der Uni, weshalb wir gesagt haben, dass ich mich einfach zu einem späteren Zeitpunkt nochmal bei ihr melde. Das habe ich natürlich gemacht und teile deshalb heute das wirklich wundervolle, berührende, bewegende Interview mit Maris mit dir in dieser Folge. Ich hoffe sehr, dass Englisch für dich kein Problem ist, da Maris Amerikanerin ist, in den USA lebt. Falls du im Nachhinein irgendwelche Fragen hast oder irgendetwas nicht ganz verstehen konntest, dann melde dich gerne bei mir über irgendeinen meiner Social Media Kanäle. Jetzt wünsche ich dir ganz viel Freude. Los geht's. Welcome to the Soul Food Journey podcast, Maris. I'm so glad that you're here and that we will spend some time here together talking about your journey, your experience, and everything you want to share with the community here in Germany. Thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit before, and I already told you about a very interesting question I've got the last days. But before we go to this question, I would like you to introduce yourself to the community. I think there are many people who already maybe have seen the documentary on Netflix or who went on your webpage someday. But maybe you can introduce your person. How are you today? What is important for you in your life? Who is Maris today?
Well, I'm Maris, and today this is the first official week of my senior year of college, of university. So definitely some excitement in the air. But I'm also a student of yoga, and I share the practice now as a teacher. And I came to this practice when I was in the very early years of high school, and I was struggling with my mental health and an eating disorder. And the practice offered me such well-rounded healing that I hadn't experienced before, in terms of there were the physical, practical aspects of like my body was getting stronger and in that sense. But it also offered me a method of self-study and a curiosity about what it meant for me as an individual to find healing. And that's kind of the message of what I share now, is what I've found through this practice and what I'm continuing to learn about and through it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. And you already said in your early teenage years, and I've read that you started a blog when you were 16. When did your journey, I just call it journey, when you start your recovery of mental health and your eating disorder, was it the point when you started the blog? Or what was your intention for writing some blog posts and sharing your thoughts publicly? What was the intention of starting this?
Well, I would probably say that my mental health journey started before the blog by quite a few years. I struggled with anxiety and depression as a young child. And I started seeing a therapist when I was 13 years old. Mm-hmm. So I was on this path of trying to untangle what was going on within me and around me. And the blog came I believe after I had already begun my yoga teacher training program. So I went through that program to learn more about the practice and more about what it meant for me to find my voice. And I had some desire to share what I was learning. And I've always loved writing. I've always loved reading. So to write felt very natural for me. And in many ways, starting a blog just felt like continuing the practice of journaling that I had done for quite a while. And the good thing about starting a blog is that usually when you start one, nobody's reading it. So it
Right.
still feels like a diary. You still feel like you have this space to just kind of share. And so it was really just like a place to compile my journaling, my writing. And eventually it grew into something that's different. But that's really where it came from.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. You said you went to a therapist very early with 13. Wow, that's very early.
Yeah, I didn't want to go.
Yeah.
My parents, they always had a sense that something was kind of going on, but they didn't have a lot of access to mental health education themselves. So they kind of felt like they were out of their wheelhouse. And, arguably I could have seen a therapist much younger. I was expressing anxiety at a very early age. But the only thing they knew to do was to take me to my general healthcare practitioner, my pediatrician, and he wasn't equipped to provide mental health support. And I don't believe he even made the suggestion to see a therapist. He was very, and with pure intentions, he just wanted to treat the symptoms. Like, oh, she's not sleeping well, try going to bed earlier, like very practical suggestions that didn't get to the root of what I really needed, which was coping mechanisms for anxiety. So arguably I could have seen one much earlier. But when I was 13, my parents started to really brush up against my eating disorder. And I think those were really troubling symptoms that they couldn't just explain away anymore. So that's when they made the decision to take me to a therapist. And I kind of went in kicking and screaming. I was a little uncertain about it because there's so much stigma around it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I still see that same therapist today. So I'm very grateful for that.
Wow, really?
That happened for me.
Yeah, that's great. And were you already able to talk about what's going on when you were 13? Because I imagine it very difficult to express what's going on in your head, in your mind, in your emotions. Yeah.
I mean, I literally, for the first, oh my gosh, probably up to a year of seeing my therapist, I didn't really say anything at all. Like I would sit in silence, which I think is a testament to the power of holding space. Like really all my therapist did was create that container for me and let me use it as I needed to use it and didn't push me too hard. And that was just the approach that we took on my individual basis. But at the end of the day, I knew I had this space available to me once a week where I could come and just be, even if I wasn't quite able to verbally process what I was experiencing yet. Eventually, what really was a turning point in my relationship with therapy was the practice of yoga, because so much of yoga is self-study and self-exploration. And I started to build a vocabulary to express how I was feeling. And that's when I felt like I could utilize my time in therapy maybe more effectively.
Okay. So like the combination of all together. And how did you get to yoga? Because now it's a huge part of your life and also of your whole journey in life till today. How did you get there, or how did yoga come to you? Maybe.
Yeah. So when I was a freshman in high school, although I was already seeing a therapist, my eating disorder continued to progress. And I ended up being hospitalized for a period of time. And the summer after that hospitalization, I was on bed rest or partial bed rest. And I was seeing a doctor very frequently. And eventually, at some point in my kind of physical recovery, like my body started to come back online. And I basically was begging my doctor, like, what can I do? I want to move my body. I had been an athlete. before, and I was still struggling with an unhealthy relationship with exercise. I wanted to move my body not because I thought it would be like nourishing and healthy for my soul. Like I wanted to kind of get back to what my eating disorder wanted me to be up to. And I'm sure she saw that.
Yeah.
So what she recommended was yoga. And she recommended it purely from a physical standpoint. She was like, it's just stretching, very relaxed, very easy. Give it a shot. So I went in not expecting to find the deep cultural and philosophical history and roots of the practice. I went in just like, well, this is the exercise, quote unquote, that I'm allowed to do. And it just so happened that I wandered into a yoga studio that, thankfully puts so much of an emphasis on the inner work that's at the heart of this practice. And I didn't hear dialogue around, a yoga class being a workout. I didn't hear dialogue around a yoga class being designed to change the way my body looked. I was really learning about how to use this practice to heal my heart and soul and how to use it to better understand myself. And that just kind of was the catalyst for the later part of my journey.
Yeah. When there is someone now and is listening to your words and maybe understands that she or he is going to yoga at the moment or is practicing yoga at the moment to shape in their bodies, what do you think is the main transformation in maybe your thoughts or maybe your whole thinking about yoga that can change your motivation to practice yoga in a healthy or maybe in a mindful way?
I think a gift that my teachers gave me was the understanding that yoga isn't meant to fix me. And I think I had this idea from the messages that have been sent to me about what it means to experience a mental illness or, even just being, a person who has like imperfections and flaws, if you want to look at it that way, was that I was broken. And that because I was broken, I deserved to be fixed. And that had to feel punishing. And so I think I approached my yoga practice with that same sense of, if I can do this well enough, I will finally be enough. I will finally be fixed, and I will finally be worthy of love. And what I came to find through the practice of yoga, not just the asana, not just the physical shapes, but yoga, is that I am already enough. And this practice is just designed to show me that I am not broken and that I don't need to be fixed. And I think that having that mindset shift really changed the way I interacted with the practice, and it really changed the way I showed up on my mat.
Yeah. So I told you about this question, which is not easy because I think there is no right or wrong or the best answer. But I already told you, and a woman a few days ago wrote me a message, and she asked me if yoga is a must in recovery to fully recover. What would you say, or what would be your answer to this question? If everyone who is in recovery should do or practice yoga, and if it's a must for recovery?
I've met many people who are fully recovered, identify as fully recovered, who have never even looked at a yoga mat or read a yogic text or done any form of yoga. So I don't believe that it's somehow a requirement for recovery, or that if you recovered from an eating disorder and don't practice yoga, that invalidates your recovery. I think everybody is different. And I think all eating disorders are different. The roots of every eating disorder come from a different place. And so what will be healing to you won't look the same as someone else.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing in the whole progress everybody is in when he or she is in recovery. I think it's important to understand that it's your own story, it's your own way, and we all can try everything. But when we try everything, we can just get a feeling of it. And when you practice yoga or give it a try, then you know if yoga is something for you, or if it's something for your journey, or if it's something where you can feel your body. I also often hear that people get their body sensations back through yoga or through the practice of yoga. But I also think it's your own way or your own experience. You can just experience it or not.
Yeah. And I think there's also freedom there for, like, maybe it's not right for this time. But you can always put it on a shelf and, maybe later in your journey, it will resonate with you in a different way. So there's freedom there of, like, if it doesn't resonate now, you never know how it might feel in a few years or months. So there's also different phases of recovery, different parts of it.
Yeah. Did you went for the first time to yoga and loved it from then on, or did you give it a try more often?
I mean, I remember my first class feeling very joyful because it was, it was just this very fun, playful practice. And I remember realizing or having the realization that there was no way to be perfect at this practice. And I had spent so much of my life trying to do everything perfectly, like get the best grades, be the best swimmer, whatever. And all of a sudden it was kind of like I was laughing out of amazement of, like, oh, I can't be perfect at this, but I'm still having fun. So that was definitely, that was eye-opening, and it made me want to come back for more, but I don't know that I fell in love right away. I think I thought it would be maybe like a small part of my recovery or something I would do on the weekends. I didn't realize that yoga is more than something you just go and do for an hour, on a Saturday morning. It really becomes a part of your daily life and the way that you interact with yourself and others. I don't think I saw that right away.
Yeah, I can imagine. If there are some people who haven't seen the documentary already, I'm sure they will after this show. But if they haven't seen it yet, can you tell us a little bit of or maybe of the story behind the story? So how did you, or did you get an email one day and there was someone in this world who asked you if you want to do a documentary who is later on Netflix? Or how was the way to this great documentary to share this? I think it's an important topic for the whole society at the moment and also in the future. So I think it's a very important topic. And you give it like a face with your own story. But how did you get there?
So I know the filmmaker. She wasn't just a random person that emailed me. I actually used to babysit her kids because she was raising her kids in the same town I grew up in. And she was going back to film school while I was in, I guess, middle or high. And she was friends with my mom on Facebook, and she saw some of my paintings that my mom posted. And Laura, she felt like there was some kind of story behind them, like she could see emotion behind them. So she ended up being one of the first people that reached out to my mom and kind of asked how I was doing. Because I grew up in a town where you didn't really talk about your problems, quote unquote. You didn't really talk about mental health. So it was it wasn't a secret, but it just wasn't something that we talked openly about. So Laura ended up being one of the first people to really understand what I was going through, or to even ask. And so she continued to follow my work over the next few years, and reading what I was writing and following my journey. And she had the idea to make a short film that really focused on my writing and my paintings. So she wanted to animate my paintings and have me basically read some of my writings over them. And she just kept filming and filming, and more things were happening in my life. It was getting towards the end of high school. So she started just filming me graduating and moving away to college and things like that. And eventually she felt like she had enough to make a full-length documentary. So she went forward with that and made a first cut all on her own. You know, that's very unusual in the filmmaking world, to just do it all on her own. And, you know, put together this rough first cut that we held a private screening of at Just Yoga, the yoga studio where I had found the practice. And from there, we were able to get more support behind us, eventually a distributor and an editing team that really put the final touches on it. But yeah, Laura did all the hard work. I always think it's funny when people come up to me and like, you made a movie, like you made a film. Like, oh, I didn't make anything. Like Laura did all the hard work. I just showed up.
Yeah. How did you feel that time when you said yes to this big project? Did you understand that this would be like a great, huge message everybody can see later somewhere from all over the world?
No, I mean, I think I still had that image in my head of like a short film that would exist somewhere on the internet. Like, not that there's anything wrong with short films, but I just didn't imagine the scale of it. I believe I went into the project wholeheartedly believing in the service aspect of it. Like I really just wanted to be of service. And I knew that when I was really struggling, there weren't a lot of positive films out there on eating disorders. The ones that I saw felt exploitative in the fact that they really focused on bodies, like who is the thinnest or how thin someone could get. And I found them to be triggering just in like the excessive detailing of exactly how much someone ate or exactly how someone exercised. And they always seem to end with very little hope involved. It was always kind of this very like drab and dreary portrayal of recovery, which was essentially no recovery. Like for a while, I was left with the impression that recovery just wasn't possible based on the media that I was finding. Or if it did even portray recovery, it portrayed it in a very simplistic way of like, they gained weight and then I guess that means the eating disorder is gone. So I really believe that if we were to make intentionally a film that strayed away from those tropes or stereotypes around mental illness, that I could be of service to someone, and that I could lend my voice to someone and maybe offer them a different perspective when they need it most. So throughout the whole process of developing the film, I was kind of just like hands to the universe, like, you know, how can I show up? How can I be most of service? And it seemed like that helped me stay very rooted and grounded throughout the process. Like just kind of remembering that it's not, the film is called I Am Maris, but it's about far more voices than my own. And to stay rooted in that place makes me feel very grateful as opposed to overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But still sometimes overwhelmed.
Yeah. It's really, I think it's amazing that a friend of your family did this great project with you, and she did it all by her own. It's, oh my God.
Laura's amazing. Laura's amazing. I know, like she's not in the film, so I think sometimes people don't mention her as much as she deserves, because you can't like see her, you can't really put a face to her unless you go to an event or something like that. But she really is the magic behind all of it.
Yeah. What is yoga today for you? So maybe some people think, oh, you're doing yoga the whole day, or you never know what's going on in the heads of others.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not doing asana all day long. I'm definitely not doing downward dogs all day. But I mean, I am doing yoga all day in the sense that, you know, like I'm practicing the philosophy of it. Like I'm trying to be a compassionate person. I'm trying to be of service. So in that sense, I try my best to do yoga all day, but I'm definitely not doing handstands 24/7.
Yeah. When you talk about compassion, to be compassionate with yourself and with others and be in service, what or how does it look like in practice and in life? How does it look like in behavior or in thinking or maybe also feeling? What is the practical part behind being compassionate for you?
I think it requires presence, because if there's something that I've learned, many times over in this process, it's that to be of service is to ask what is needed, not to assume what is needed. And that requires being present with the people around me, with who I am that day, with what's going on in the world that day, and kind of just asking, what is most needed right now, and what do I have the capacity to offer without doing harm to myself?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that is something I've learned from my teachers and from experience, is that everything we practice in yoga, things like non-harming, things like truthfulness, they're not just things that we project onto others or onto the world around us. They have to be inwardly practiced. So if I'm going to be of service to others, I have to show up for myself. If I want to be kind to others, I have to be kind to myself. And I think that that reflective practice is what keeps me rooted. And, in a practical sense, it really does just mean waking up every day and having to take it day by day. If I am drained and exhausted physically, emotionally, mentally, my service that day has to be taking care of myself. If I wake up and I know I have more to give, then it's a matter of looking around and trying to understand what I can do that day. Whether it's something as small as offering a listening ear to a friend, or something bigger like being a part of a service project. It really is a day by day practice.
Yeah. You said you started university now, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just starting my last year.
What do you study?
I study psychology, and I'm in the School of Social Justice at UC Santa Cruz.
Oh, cool. And if you imagine when I would come to the US in 3 or 5 years maybe, and I met you, or I go to one of your classes, of your yoga classes, and in 3 or 5 years, then I ask you, oh, Maris, what did you do the last years? What would you wish to answer in 5 years what you did in between?
That's a good question.
I know.
You're like, I came up with it. I know it's good. Ooh, what comes to mind is a book. Like I've been in this online writing space for what feels like a while now. And I really just have this craving to have something tangible that I can like hand to someone. And I don't have a desire for it to be like a traditional self-help book. Like I don't imagine it being prescriptive. Like, here, let me tell you how to fix your life, because I don't personally find that to be helpful. But I have this desire to create something that feels like the essence of what I've learned up till now, and just to have a way to share that with others.
Do you think there are some of your paintings in the book?
Yeah, I think I could see that being integrated for sure.
Oh, what was the important part of painting for you?
I think that, although I love writing and although I love reading, sometimes I just don't have the words to express how I feel. So painting kind of gives me a way to get emotion out of me without having to find the perfect words for it, or without trying to come up with a perfect way to phrase it, or the perfect way to have a solution for it. So I can just kind of get out what needs to get out. And I really enjoy that creative process.
Do you think there is, if there is someone who also have this feeling of, oh, I cannot talk about it, or I cannot express myself. But painting, I can't painting. I never learned how to paint or something like that. Do you have any idea who someone can just try to express themselves without words?
I have a few different thoughts on this. So my first thought is, as you're describing that idea of like, oh, I don't know how to paint. I'm worried I won't do it right. I hear that all the time from people who would like to try practicing yoga. That like fear of jumping into something new, and that pressure that we sometimes put on ourselves to already be good at something before we even begin to learn it, and I hear that all the time of like, well, I'm afraid to come to a yoga class because I'm afraid I'm not flexible enough, strong enough, calm enough, whatever idea they have of what someone practicing yoga looks like or can do. Like, well, we're just here to learn and grow, and there's no entry exam to like begin something. So that's something I observe in myself. So I always like to kind of point out that pattern that many of us fall into. But in terms of art, like I would also encourage that mindset shift of like, you're probably not trying to get into art school. Like if you're just using this as a self-journaling exercise, you don't even have to show it to anyone else. So there's freedom here for it to be whatever it needs to be, whatever it needs to be in this moment. And there's no burden of perfection on this practice. So, it can be as little as if you like to sit down and just doodle for an hour, if that lets you just immerse yourself in the process without having to think too much, I think that's enough. But if the actual physical process of like drawing or painting or doodling, if that doesn't resonate with you, then there's probably something else out there that gives you that same sense of timelessness, of just immersion into some kind of relief. Whether that's going for a walk on the beach or like, I hear kind of the same thing from people who sing or make music. There's freedom to find whatever it is that works for you.
Yeah, so true. What was your, maybe if there is one main anxiety, what do you think is like a typical anxiety why people sometimes don't want to live their true self? Why do you think it's for most of the people so difficult to be themselves, to show up, to talk about themselves, to talk about emotions, to feel their own emotions, despite living a life of others, or maybe living a life of how they think they should live?
That's a great question. And, I can only speak for myself and what I've experienced.
Yeah, sure.
For me, the fear that comes up when it comes to expressing myself is the fear of rejection or disbelief. So like the fear that being wholly myself means that I will not be accepted by those around me or loved by those around me. Or the fear that if I am to share who I am, it just won't be believed by others. Like others will not believe what I know to be true about myself. I think that is definitely a fear that I have experienced, and one that I think in many ways I'm still learning how to navigate compassionately and how to do it in a way that feels safe and a way that feels loving.
Yeah. How do you deal today with anxiety? When you feel anxiety, or when you feel that there comes up something like anxiety, how do you deal with that today?
I'm lucky now to have a rather large toolbox that I can pull from. So like there are big things I can do, like I can go have a whole session with my therapist, or I can call up a friend. There's also things that I can do in the moment, like identify where in my body I'm feeling that anxiety. Like if I close my eyes, I can envision oh, that feels like it's in my chest, or I can feel it in the pit of my belly, and I can breathe, like take slow, deep breaths into those spaces. That sort of thing I find calms my body and brings me to a calmer state. But then there's also things I do, kind of preventatively. So like I know that I need to get enough sleep. I know that I can't drink too much caffeine. Like there are things I do to manage my anxiety in that way.
Yeah. It's like caring about or caring for your feelings, right? It's like caring for yourself, caring for everything which is part of you. And I think anxiety, feelings, or any kind of feeling is like everything is a small part of your whole self.
Mm-hmm.
What if you have the opportunity, and you have this opportunity for sure, you can share something or something you want to know, or you want everyone in this world to know this, and you have the opportunity to share something with everyone. What would you like to share someday, maybe? Which everyone can hear or read?
If there was a core message that I really feel like underlies everything that I do and that I feel passionate about, it's that you're already enough. So there's nothing about you that needs to be fixed. You don't need to wait until you are prettier, richer, smarter, whatever, to be loved. You have inherent worthiness just by being on this planet, and you deserve all the support in the world to learn how to see that worthiness. And you don't need to wait until you are sick enough, quote unquote, to get support. You don't need to prove to anyone that you need support. You already deserve it. That's something that I feel very passionate about, that message that you're already enough.
Yeah. How do you share this message nowadays at the moment?
I integrate these messages when I teach a yoga practice. And I write still, publicly, and I share on social media these messages. And, I try to just lead by example. The way I live my life, I feel like is a teacher to those around me who may or may not, learn from it. But I have to kind of walk the walk if I want to talk the talk.
Yeah, that's great. You're like when I look at my screen at the moment, no one can see it, but I can see you. So I just have two words in my head all the time since we are talking, and it's beautiful soul. Really, you are a really beautiful soul, and your eyes are shining so deep. There's so much, I don't know, wisdom, deepness. Is it the right English word? I don't know. Deepness.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I thank you for your time and for for sharing your experiences, for being this person you are. And I'm sure you will write a book. I know that you're writing a book. Yeah, I really believe in it. And I think we will all or we will all see this book someday, also in Germany, for example, maybe. Yeah, and thank you really so much for your time. It's awesome what you're doing, Maris.
Thank you so much, and thanks for making this space to have me on. I really appreciate it.
Ja. Vielleicht hast du es gemerkt und es ist dir aufgefallen, denn ich habe die Zeit mit Maris total genossen und finde es so unglaublich wertvoll, was aus diesem eine Bekannte nimmt ein paar Videoszenen aus meinem Leben auf, geworden ist. Du kannst die Doku bei Netflix gucken oder auch über iTunes kaufen oder ausleihen. Den Link zur Website vom Film und auch zu Maris Instagram-Profil findest du in den Shownotes. Ich finde, Maris ist eine tolle Inspiration, die Doku ist eine wundervolle Bereicherung, gibt einen Blickwinkel, gibt eine bestimmte Perspektive, um auch tiefer zu gehen, tiefer zu schauen, in sich zu schauen. Und deswegen war es mir wichtig, dieses Interview unbedingt mit dir zu teilen, damit auch du Maris persönlich und etwas besser kennenlernen kannst. Bis nächste Woche wieder hier im Podcast und ein Hoch auf uns, deine Kira.